One of the best ways to catch data entry errors by either your company or by the bank is the bank reconciliation process within CenterPoint. I'm going to be using the CenterPoint for Agriculture product in this example, but the example does apply to all three products, the CenterPoint for Agriculture, CenterPoint Accounting, and CenterPoint Fund Accounting. To start a bank reconciliation, we're going to go to Processes, Banking, and Bank Reconciliation. When you come to the bank reconciliation screen, any previously done reconciliations are going to be listed on the List tab. So right now I'm on the List tab. And it's showing me all of the reconciliations for all companies and all bank accounts. So in this situation, I actually have two companies. They both have an account at First National Bank, okay? If I had multiple bank accounts, let's say I had a First National Bank checking and a First National Bank savings, I might see CenterPoint Farm listed twice, once for each bank account and then once for each of the periods. So one of the things you might want to do is set up filters for a combination of a single company and single bank account. For example, if I just wanted to see those reconciliation statements for CenterPoint Farm's First National Bank account, I'm going to go over to the Filter tab, and I'm going to go ahead and filter for a company that contains the word farm in it. So I'm going to add that to the filter. And I'm also going to filter for a bank account that begins with the word first. Okay, and I'm going to add that to the filter. And I could go ahead and click Apply on that. And I would have just CenterPoint Farm's First National Bank. Now, if that's a filter I think I'm going to be reusing again in the future, I'm going to go back to the Filter tab and I'm going to click Save on this. And I'm going to call this my CenterPoint Farms First National filter and click OK. And you'll see that it'll say that up here on the top. So next time I exit the screen and come back, it's going to go back to my default filter, which actually if I close out of here and I come back and go to Processes and Banking and Bank Reconciliation, it goes back to my default filter, which shows me all of the companies and all of the bank accounts. So now when I want to select that filter I created, I just go ahead and select it, and it limits me to seeing just those statements that were for this combination of company and bank account. There are some additional columns that we can see when we look at these bank statements. You can also choose which direction you want to sort them. Right now I'm seeing the most recent statement at the top, but if I clicked on that column again, it would put those in reverse order. So by clicking on the column, it just puts it in ascending and then descending order. So whatever order I want to order those by, I'm going to click on that column heading. I could also add additional columns by right-clicking and going to Add Remove Columns. One of the columns that you might want to add is this one called Transactions Removed. And then you might also want to add a column called Notation if you wind up putting notations on these bank reconciliation statements, which we'll see where we do that in just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And that goes ahead and puts those two columns on the grid. The Transactions Removed column basically is going to tell me after I save this reconciliation, if I didn't close a period, there is still the possibility that somebody could go into that period and edit or delete a transaction that was previously reconciled. It'll give you a warning when you do that, but sometimes people wind up doing it anyway. So this Transactions Removed column would indicate to you that there were transactions that have been removed since the reconciliation had occurred. And that might be why maybe your bank account doesn't balance right now when you do your most recent reconciliation. So that column can be helpful. So that's why I've gone ahead and added that column. To start a new reconciliation, we would click on the Create New at the bottom. And you're going to go ahead and put in your reconciliation date. So this should be the ending date of your bank statement. So I'm going to put in 12/31 of 19 as my ending date. And then you're also going to put in the bank statement balance at the end of the statement period. So we don't want the beginning statement balance, we want the ending. So I'm going to put in 233,598.63 here. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and click OK. So what it does is it takes us to this bank reconciliation tab. And on there, you're going to see that there's 3 tabs. There's 3 sub tabs. There's a fees and interest, a reconcile, a summary. I'm sorry, there's 4 tabs, and a reports tab. So it's going to start on the fees and interest tab. Now, if you have already entered in your fees and interest as separate transactions, then you could ignore this tab and go straight to the reconcile tab. Okay, if you have not entered in the fees and interest that are listed on the bank statement, here's your opportunity to enter it in right from this screen. So up at the top, we would enter for any fees, we could enter in the date of those fees. We would choose the bank account that we put those to, or the expense account that we put those to. And if it's always going to be the same account, we can right click and set it as a default. Okay, we can also assign some sort of a sequence number for that transaction, since it will create a transaction. And then down here at the bottom, it's showing me the combination of company and bank account that was included in this transaction. So we can tell it how much in fees we had. I'm going to put $10 in here right now, but I actually don't have any fees on this bank statement, so I'm going to wind up taking that off. And then since this is an expense account, it's going to ask us to, if we want to attach any management details to that transaction. So in other words, do we want to put this expense to a particular profit center, production center, which would be location for those of you who are using our business or our fund product. Also for the fund customers, profit center would actually be the same thing as department. Okay, and then production year and production series, which is tracking number 1 and tracking number 2 for those of you who are using the fund and business products. Okay, or if we don't want to attach any management details and we have this expense account assigned to a distribution, we can come over here and say, we want to add this to the distribution, and then this expense would get distributed to those management details the same way any other expense attached to that that account distribution would get allocated. Okay, so I'm going to take that off because I actually don't have any fees on this particular bank account. But down at the bottom then is where we can record any interest. So we're going to choose the date that we want to date that interest transaction. We're going to choose our interest revenue account over here. And if it's always the same account, we can right click and set it as the default. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put in my interest here of $1.42. And this interest income account is attached to a distribution. So I am going to mark it as being attached to a distribution over here. Okay, so this is going to get distributed the same way anything else attached to that same distribution would get distributed. Okay, once I'm done entering in my fees and interest, I can proceed over here to the Reconcile tab. When you come to the Reconcile tab, basically what you have are 2 sides. The first side on the left-hand side are any checks and payments out of the bank account, so any distributions out of the bank account. And then on the right-hand side are any deposits that have been brought into the bank account. You're going to notice that there are some columns up here at the top on either side. Those columns will allow you to sort this any way you want. For example, if for some reason I wanted this in payee alphabetical order, I could click on that column and then all of these would be in payee alphabetical order. So if I wanted them in date order, I could just click on the date column and it would put them in date order. And then the same thing with transaction number. Okay, so I can do that same sorting on either side of the grids here. Down here on the right-hand side, I do want you to notice that that interest we entered in of $1.42 has already been check to be reconciled with this particular statement. And it shows down here that we already have a cleared increase of $1.42. Okay, on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see a transaction here that has a, that's in yellow. That transaction in yellow means that that particular transaction was deleted. Now, was voided. Now that's probably this transaction here, so it was probably previously entered in and then voided and then re-entered in, so there is the amount that it should have been. Okay, but we want to see those voided transactions, particularly for checks, because we would want to be able to keep track of whether or not a check number was just missing or whether or not it was a voided transaction. So eventually you will want to clear those voided transactions off with all of them, all the other transactions. You might leave it out there for 1 or 2 months. Like it's possible that next month I have 025 come up. So I might want to know what happened to 026. Okay, notice 025 isn't part of this particular month's reconciliation. So I might want to see that 026 right after the 025 again next month, but then after that, I'd probably want to clear it off so that it doesn't keep reappearing here. Okay, so to go ahead and clear items, we have a couple of different ways that we can do that. I can choose to clear all and then uncheck anything that didn't clear, or you have the ability to go ahead and just clear the first one. And if you are more of a keyboard oriented person, you're going to, you could use the space bar to keep marking the next item. Every time you hit the space bar, it marks it as being cleared and it drops it down to the next line. Okay, if you come across one that didn't clear, you can skip it by going ahead and using your down arrow on your keyboard and then continue to go ahead and clear any additional items. Okay, I'm going to unclear all of those. If you see an item on the grid and that item is, the amount is coming up different than what you see on the bank statement, you could edit the item by going ahead and highlighting it and clicking the edit button at the top, and that would take you into editing the transaction. Okay, so you can make whatever changes you needed to that transaction and then resave it. Okay, you could also edit a transaction by simply double clicking on it, and that would allow you to go in and edit the transaction. And finally, the third way to edit it is to highlight it, right click, and then choose to edit it. Okay. If you know that a transaction has reconciled on this bank statement, but you don't see it listed here, there is a possibility that it was just entered in with a date after the end date of this statement. So if you want to see all transactions that were entered in after the ending date of this statement that are not reconciled already on another statement, then you could click on the More Checks button, and then it would show you any additional transactions that haven't been included here that you might be able to add to this statement. So I really don't have any that are uncleared that are not appearing here. So if I did though, I would have the opportunity from that screen, let me go back to the Allow More Check screen, to highlight a transaction and edit it. This one I can't edit because it was a payroll transaction, but I would usually have the ability to edit the transaction and change the date so that we could bring it into this statement. Okay, I have those same capabilities over here on the right-hand side where we have our deposits. So I can highlight it and edit it. I can click on More Deposits, which would show me any deposits that might be lingering out there in future months. Maybe you just entered it in with the wrong date. That might be a reason why it's just sitting out there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear all of these transactions over here on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, because all of mine did clear. But anything that did not clear, you would simply go ahead and uncheck it. Okay, on the right-hand side, I just want you to notice as I'm going ahead and I'm clearing these that I have basically what looks like two deposits here. I have this one that's already expanded out. And what this one is this is a check that was deposited by itself it didn't go on a bank deposit slip with some other items. So to clear it, I'm going to clear it individually down here on this line. Okay, after that is where I did create a bank deposit, and that bank deposit actually included both of these items. So to clear it, all I have to do is clear the top item, and it will automatically clear the items below it. Okay. So it looks like I'm a little bit off, and the problem is that this particular transaction did not clear the bank account yet, and I had left it reconciled. So I'm going to take it off of there, and you would want your difference to go down to 0 here. Okay, so mine does, and so therefore I am ready to go ahead and save this statement. Okay. If it doesn't reconcile, one of the things you might have done is you might have put in a wrong statement balance. If that's the case, you can go ahead and click statement balance, and you could go ahead and edit the balance. Okay. There is a tab over here called the summary tab. If I go over to the summary tab, you'll see here that it tells me the total of my cleared checks, the total of my cleared deposits, what my statement balance was, what the outstanding checks were, outstanding deposits, and it gives me my ending statement balance. That's going to compare it to what your actual general ledger in CenterPoint says the balance should be. They match, therefore my difference is 0. Okay. From either here on the reconcile statement tab, from here on the summary tab, or by going to the reports tab, I'll have the ability to print out this reconciliation. So I'm going to do it straight from the reports tab, but I could have certainly done it from one of those other tabs. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to show you what the bank reconciliation report says. On that report, you can include cleared checks and deposits, but you can also include a list of uncleared checks and deposits. So I'm going to include both, and then go ahead and click preview. And then you'll be able to see here that this is basically up at the top is the information that we saw on the summary tab of the bank statement. And then down below, I'm getting a list of all my cleared checks, all my cleared deposits. And since I also said to include the outstanding, it's showing me all of those that were outstanding as well. Okay, I'm going to close that report. And I am really ready to go ahead and save this reconciliation. So I'm going to go back to the Reconcile tab, and I'm going to go ahead and save the reconciliation. Okay, and that is all there is to bank reconciliation. Except for the fact that you can at any time come back and go back into a bank reconciliation. So if you have to save it before it's reconciled, you can save it. So as you're marking items to be reconciled, if something pulls you away from this, you can save it in an unreconciled state. And you can also return to a bank reconciliation at any time. Let's say I just want to print out that reconciliation report. I could go ahead and edit a bank reconciliation at any time, go back to the reports tab, and then produce the bank reconciliation from that particular statement. So this is my 831 statement. So it does allow you to go back and reprint those. Thank you.